Hey there my friends, I hope you're all keeping well. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to be exploring how to sketch a likeness. So all we're using today is a piece of printer paper. I like it because it's really thin paper and it will help you towards the end if you're going to be using some tracing paper and things to copy this drawing over to a piece of watercolour paper or anything like that. So just a piece of printer paper today and a Derwent drawing pencil. It's the graphic brand, I think, Derwent graphic drawing pencil, and it's just a B. It's quite soft. Now the best things about using a soft pencil is you don't need to apply very much pressure at all with your hand, and you'll leave a mark on the paper. It's easy to erase with a putty rubber. We're going to be using a Faber Castell putty rubber today, and it doesn't make any indentations. It doesn't dent the paper, so it's not damaging the surface of the paper at all. It doesn't really matter on this piece of photocopy paper. But if you were to say be sketching out some loose lines on watercolour paper, you definitely wouldn't want to be leaving any dents because that will show up through your paint. So all you need today is a piece of paper, a pencil, a rubber. Putty rubber is preferable, but if you haven't got one of those, then a generic white rubber from a stationer's would do, and a reference image. So I'm using a few reference images from pixabay.com and unsplash.com. They're two websites, online websites, that have an abundance of copyright-free reference images for artists. So you can pop over there, find a nice image that you like the look of, and have a go yourself. So when I sketch, and obviously this is speeded up, but I do sketch quite quickly anyway, but I drew slowly for this video, but then ended up speeding it up to 150%. I look for shapes. So I've got the reference image on my mobile phone, and instead of trying to go in straight with the detail, I begin by looking for shapes. Now these can be all different kinds of shapes that you might see in an object or in the reference. Could be circles, ovals, squares, or even triangles. And the thing to do is to try and look past all the detail. That's why it's nice working from quite a small photograph, to be quite honest, because then you can't see the detail anyway. I mean, if you zoomed in, you'd be able to see the detail, but your preliminary sketches, you just want the shapes, the pose and the shapes. So I'm just looking for the circles, the squares, how they connect together. And if it helps, then you could actually not touch the image with your pencil, but go round the image with your pencil. Hover over your reference image with your pencil to see what shapes you can actually see. You know, pretend you're drawing circles or triangles onto the image. Just hover above it, and that might give you a sense of what shapes you should be looking for, or what shapes you're able to see. The next thing is to start sketching those shapes onto your paper. It doesn't matter what they look like at this stage. You're just looking for the pose. You're trying to get the pose down onto the paper. And now while you're doing this, you can be referencing measurements within the pose. So this squirrel that I'm sketching from a few different images, I'm combining the images in my head, so it's a little bit different. But I look for the width of the body is sort of 2.5 widths of the head. And in your mind, you can be sort of calculating that, or you can hold a ruler against it. You can measure your reference image and say, 2 heads is the same as the width of the body or the width of the tail, things like that. So measure your work against itself. Now here, I'm just rubbing out with a putty rubber some of those lines that I've already made. When you're sketching, I do advise you to never erase lines that you think aren't right. Never erase them completely, because 9 times out of 10 you'll make the same mistakes again. What I'm doing here is I've just lightly erased that base layer of markings I mean, they're still there. I can still see them, and you can still see them on the video as well. But now I'm adding like a second layer. So it's a more refined layer. There's still going to be lines that I apply that I don't particularly like, and they can be erased again with the putty rubber, but don't erase them fully, because you'll likely make the same mistake again. I probably keep eraser companies in business. So if anybody says to you shouldn't be using an eraser, take that with a pinch of salt, because if I'm sketching, the eraser's a tool. It's just like anything else. Now, some people have asked about tracing, and I personally don't mind people tracing as long as they're getting some artwork done at the end of it. But don't rely on tracing. It is really, really nice to be able to freehand sketching it, which is what you're seeing now. You may be in a situation where you can't sketch anyway. If you're sitting out in the garden and, you know, some nice birds or something land in your garden at the bird feeder, you're not going to be able to get a piece of tracing paper and trace them. It's really nice, and it's so freeing to be able to freehand. And it does take practice. And I'm 54 now, and I've been drawing since I can remember. So my mum's earliest recollections of me drawing, I was about 4 years old. So that's 50 years of, oh my word, that sounds a long time. That's 50 years of sketching. And you still make mistakes, and it's still a learning curve, but it's still so enjoyable. And this is all part of the process. It's all part of the artistic process. I prefer taking my own references normally. We've not got any red squirrels around here, so hence working from some reference images off a couple of websites. But normally I'll take my own reference images and I'll work from those. And that for me is all part of the creative process as well. Making mistakes is part of the creative process. It's learning. There's no such thing as a bad line. It's a learnt line. It's learning that line didn't need to be there. And 9 times out of 10, you might make the same mistake on the same drawing, but when you come to draw again, you will have learnt from your past mistakes. So the more you do, the easier it gets. And just relax. While I was sketching this, obviously I knew the camera was overhead filming, but I still had a cup of coffee to one side, and I was listening to a podcast, so I was quite relaxed. I was sketching a little bit slower, as I said, than I would normally sketch, but it was an enjoyable process. So we've got some initial shapes in. The tails on squirrels aren't what you think they are. They're not big and floofy, really. Obviously you've got the bones running down the centre of the tail, and the hairs coming away from that central part of the tail. So it's not one big thick bushy thing like Disney would draw. But I still wanted the shape, and how this is going to be represented in a painting, which is actually what I'm filming at the moment. I'm going to be recreating this squirrel, but with watercolour pencils. So if anybody's had watercolour pencils for Christmas and you don't really know what you're doing with them, then I hope you'll be pleased to know that video is being filmed at the moment. This video will go up next. Then after this video there'll be a penguin in coloured pencil. Then after that one, this one, the squirrel in watercolour pencil, will be the one after that. So not too long to wait. But so between this one and that one, you could actually be looking on either of those two websites. That's pixabay.com or unsplash.com. Get yourself a nice reference of a squirrel. It doesn't have to be a red, it can be a grey. They're beautiful as well. Grey lives matter. Get yourself a nice sketch done of a squirrel, and then you'll be ready to have a play with some watercolours or watercolour pencils, or just normal colouring pencils. And that'll be something else to follow along to. Okay, back to this sketch. Let's have a look. I'm just reading down my list to make sure I've not forgotten to mention anything up to now. So the head of an animal, and especially the eye, is something people are drawn to in a portrait anyway. That's just natural. If you're looking at photographs of animals or people, or drawings and paintings of animals and people, it's normally the face and the eye, particularly the eye, that people are drawn to. Hence, I just wanted to get the head in there to begin with, and then I can look at that, see part of the sketch that's just about completed, and it gives you that little bit of boost to carry on with the rest of the drawing, rest of the sketch. As I said, this is really cheap paper. You can get this anywhere. I think this is probably a Wilko's brand of printer paper, photocopy paper as it used to be known. I don't know if people still photocopy these days, but yeah, printer paper. It's really thin, it's very smooth, smudges quite easily, but we don't care. We just want to get a quick sketch down for this video. So just working round the areas of the toes. Try not to be too detailed at this point, because there is no point to have detail in this sketch, because all the detail come later in the painting, when this is created into a painting. Or I should say, God, my English is terrible. I'm waffling, aren't I? Oh, that's another thing. I hope the audio's okay on this video for you. I know the video that I've just released of the leafing coloured pencil, the audio was a bit low, and I'm sorry about that. I think I've got that sorted out, and this should be recording at 100%, so that's good. I'll put a pop-up card actually round about now of another video I released onto YouTube about sketching a likeness, or creating a likeness, but it was done digitally of a camel that I photographed myself at the Welsh Mountain Zoo. If you watch that and watch this, you'll see that it doesn't matter if I'm creating a sketch digitally or traditionally. I do it exactly the same. I look for shapes, measure parts of the drawing against other parts of the drawing. Measuring things against itself helps you get the proportions correct. Okay, just carrying on, a bit of fiddly bit round there, making sure he's got enough toes. Yeah, drawing a leaf or a flower or a plant, it's easy, isn't it? Because if you get a petal out of place or a leaf out of place, it doesn't really matter, nobody notices. Get a toe out of place on an animal, I think people would soon notice. They'd either report you to the RSPCA or Greenpeace. But no, he's got enough toes, he's got the right amount of toes that we needed, and I think he's holding an acorn. So the thing I had in mind when I was creating this this sketch was to create a watercolour pencil drawing painting. I guess it would be called a painting because you're using water with it, that looks quite wintry, because I know it's January 2021, but I'm already looking forward to Christmas because I'm quite a Christmassy person. So I thought it was something that looks a bit wintry or keep me in the Christmas mood. We've still got our Christmas tree up actually. It's right behind me with all its twinkly lights on. So I don't know when that's probably has to come down soon, being we're on the last day of January. Okay, round the toes now. Just keep glancing at your reference image. And if you're still unsure about freehand sketching, I mean, that's what this is classed as, freehand sketching. There's different methods you can try without resorting to tracing. If you do want, don't get me wrong, if you want to trace, then trace. But as I said, there might be some situations where you won't be able to trace, and then you'll wish you had freehand coordination. So if you're sort of torn between the two, you could try the grid method. I'll make a video about that. It's not something I use, but I know other people that do use it and use it very well. and it's just a case of putting a grid over your reference image and then putting a grid of equal amount of squares over the piece of paper that you're going to be drawing onto. And you can enlarge a piece by doing it that way. You can alter the ratio. You can scale up or scale down, so you can make your drawing bigger than your reference image or smaller than your reference image, but still keep the correct proportions. So that is something you could look at, is trying the grid method. And then as you get used to the grid method, it is all practice, being able to draw what you can see. And the main thing is to draw what you can see and not what you think you can see. And then move away from that gradually, and before you know it, you'll be freehanding. As I said, it's a lovely feeling creating a freehand sketch. I personally like this probably the most out of all my art things that I do. For the simple reason is it's something that takes me right back to my childhood. We had a wildlife garden. We did have a TV, but we just weren't allowed to watch it. I don't mind at all, because I've had a lifelong hobby creating artwork, so that's great. I love it. So freehand sketching, I'd give it a go. And obviously if you don't get things right to start off with, it doesn't matter. It's just a piece of paper and it's a pencil, and you don't have to show anybody. Just make sure you keep all your sketches, because you will progress, you will get better. If it's something you really want to do, you'll get better and better and better the more you do it. Don't choose subjects that are too simple. An animal that's looking directly at you face on will be harder than one that's profile, because if you choose a subject that's looking straight at you, we have a tendency to want symmetry, and symmetry really doesn't, or very rarely exists, in the faces of animals. If you look at a person, their faces are not symmetrical, and it goes with animals as well. Very, very rarely would anything in nature would be symmetrical, except things like snowflakes. Even leaves and petals aren't symmetrical, not 100%. So try looking, if you're going to do an animal's face, try looking for a profile pose, such as this style of, the squirrel looking to the side, or a 3/4 face, so as though the animal or bird is looking over your shoulder. Much easier to draw than something face on. You'll have a tendency, when you're creating something looking face on, looks more cartoony to begin with than something that's a 3/4 angle or profile, such as this. So that's the sketch done. Quick signature there. That's my little guy done. He is copyrighted, this sketch, for me, but obviously please go to pixabay.com or unsplash.com, find a nice photograph to draw from over there and give it a go yourself. Okay, so now we have an LED tablet. So they used to be known as light boxes, and probably still classed as light boxes now, and they were used in the days of animation when things were done 2D animation. And all I'm doing is I've put my completed sketch onto the light box. I've not actually switched the light on the light box on. I didn't need to, because it was I could see the lines through the tracing paper. All I'm doing now, I just want to get that finished sketch onto a piece of tracing paper, and then I'll just store that away. So I've now got 2 copies. I've got the traced copy and I've got the original sketch. And it's just for whatever you want to do with those next. So the next video regarding the squirrel, I actually used the light box to take the tracing paper sketch onto watercolour paper. Just be a fact of putting the tracing paper down first, watercolour paper on top, switching the light on the light box. It shines through and you can do a quick sketch straight onto your watercolour paper. No rubbing out, so no damaging of the paper. But that's in the next video to come regarding the squirrel. So yeah, just go over here. You can make slight alterations because pencil does rub out very well off the tracing paper with a putty rubber. The pencil I'm using there is a Pentel. I'm trying to see what I'm using. It's a Pentel, and it's a 0.9, I believe, running with an HB lead in there. It's a mechanical pencil. So there you have the completed sketch. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and please subscribe to my channel. I'm looking to make 2021 a year of getting this YouTube channel up to the next level. And for those of you that have already subscribed and have been filling me with joy the past year when I haven't been able to post, you've sent me so many emails, so many messages. You've really blessed me, and I thank you so much for supporting me on this journey. Stay safe, everybody. Stay creative, and I'll see you all soon. Take care. Bye-bye.